What's up, guys? Before we get into the main content of this video, I want to let you guys know that I am giving away a brand new Xbox One X. It's so pretty. It's from GameStop. They sent over this to give away to you guys. Thank you very much, GameStop, for doing that. I'm also giving away a PDP Xbox Crimson Red controller. And then a HyperX Cloud Alpha headset. I don't have one with me right now, but it is a top quality one. I used it all throughout my last apartment. And all you have to do to enter the giveaway is leave a like on this video, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Then click the link in the description. Okay, it's going to take you to a Gleam website. It's a vast link. Click on that. You'll be taken to another website where you can continue and finish off your giveaway entries. All right, guys, so thank you very much, and let's jump into the rest of this video. Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new Battle for Azeroth video. I've talked about Destruction, I've talked about Demonology, and today we're going to be talking about the Affliction Warlock in a brand new video to talk about what's going on with the changes in the alpha. Obviously, things can change again, and I'll keep you guys up to date as things do change. But specifically with the Affliction Warlock and its changes, I think that you guys are going to be happy with what I have to say. And with Legion Beta, it actually was a huge amount of oversimplification with this class. A lot of people were really hit hard, and a lot of the people that played Affliction Warlock for so long felt like they were playing a very dumbed down, a very easy and kind of bland version of their class. So to see Affliction Warlock change with these alpha changes, I think that they are moving in the right direction, and I want to kind of highlight what's been going on in the alpha. But again, keep in mind that this stuff can change. All right, so I want to talk about the baseline abilities that are going on with Affliction Warlock, and then after that I'll talk about the talents, and then I will show you some leveling footage at the very end as I talk about my my overall design philosophy, right? And like how I feel this class is shaping up and what is working and what's not. All right, so just moving on to the baseline abilities, there's not a whole lot to talk about, so I'm going to keep that pretty simple. You no longer have Drained Soul, but instead you have Drained Life. Drained Life is not really in your huge damage rotation anymore, because it doesn't do that much damage, and it does take a long amount of time, but it still does give you that big healing. So if you do need to heal like you did in previous expansions, you are able to do that with Drained Life. You can actually get some healing out, and that makes sense, right? Because Drained Life was used, or Drained Soul was used for primary DPS, but now that Drained Life is back, it's actually meant to drain life and heal yourself. That's the primary point of this spell. And you have a new ability that's coming back, not that new, but it's actually one of the most hallmark spells in World of Warcraft that was removed from the Affliction Warlock last expansion, but now it's back, Shadow Bolt. Shadow Bolt is back. It does a pretty decent amount of damage and is meant to be more of a filler in your DPS rotation. Once that you have all your dots up, if you don't have any soul shards to put Unstable Affliction up, you will have Shadow Bolt available to you. And you actually have a couple talents that make Shadow Bolt a little bit more interesting and a little bit more engaging in a way that I think will be good for you guys. And then we have Shadow Fury. So Shadow Fury is an AoE stun that was in previous expansions. It's now, well, it was in last expansion too, but only as a talent in the Destruction spec. It's actually available to all specs baseline as a Warlock, and this is definitely exciting. It will definitely spice up PvP because it gives you that AoE stun on a pretty short cooldown, only 45 seconds with the talent, 1 minute without the talent. And that's pretty much all of the baseline abilities that have been introduced to the Affliction Warlock. Now I want to talk about the talents, and this is where you're going to see most of the meat of this class, because there has been quite a lot of changes within the talents. And I think that the overall class design for Warlock has changed pretty significantly. And I feel like Warlock in the last expansion used to be so heavily, like, it was just so good in terms of damage. Whether that's AoE damage or single target damage, like, they thrived at both. But with this expansion, I think that this spec is turning more into a single target damage spec. And that's why this specific first tier of talents is why I'm talking about this, because this has changed in a way that is entirely based upon single target damage. Okay, so the first up, we have Shadow Embrace. Shadow Bolt applies Shadow Embrace, increasing your damage dealt to this target by 3% for 10 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. So that if you Shadow Bolt the target 3 times, and you're able to keep that debuff up, it only lasts for 10 seconds, you will gain 9% damage. Okay, great. And then you have Haunt, which has a pretty significant change, and I think a lot of people are going to be taking this. Haunt allows you to deal a pretty large amount of damage, like 2k is a lot on the alpha, and it also increases your damage dealt to by 10% for 12 seconds. So it was actually nerfed from 15 to 10% from last expansion to this expansion. But the really interesting part about this is that Haunt is now on a 10-second cooldown, and the buff still lasts, or the debuff still lasts for 12 seconds. So theoretically, you can keep Haunt up on a target forever if you're very good with the spell, and you can keep your uptime if you can play the class well. This is a big deal because Haunt in last expansion was basically removed in a way, because Haunt had a 25-second cooldown, so it was just not that great of an ability in my opinion. But now you have a 10-second cooldown Haunt, and this will really reflect the more of like the Affliction Warlock you knew in Cataclysm, where Haunt was very relevant to the DPS rotation if you choose to take that talent. And last but not least, we have a brand new talent called Deathbolt. This is really cool, especially for PvP. It basically allows Affliction Warlocks to have burst damage. And how it works is you put up a bunch of dots and you use your Deathbolt when all those dots are on the target. It will consume 35% of the total remaining damage of your dot damage, your corruption, your agony, your siphon life, your UAs, even all of them, and it will consume all of that. It won't consume the actual dot debuff, but it will deal 35% of that total damage instantly. And this does a lot of damage on the alpha, guys. This does like 10k crits. I mean, it's a really big deal. And it also reminds me a lot of like the Demonology Thalkios, the artifact ability. So you have to cast a bunch of abilities to get like the proper amount of debuffs, and at the right moment you can cast your Deathbolt. That sounds a lot like Thalkios, and it plays a lot like Thalkios in my opinion. And now it's introduced into the Affliction Warlock spec to allow Affliction Warlocks to have burst damage, which will be a very big deal in PvP if this talent does get changed, or does go through exactly like this, and if Warlocks choose to play this talent. We have Writhe and Agony, and this is very similar to how it was in Legion. Really nothing has changed except for it is actually on the 30 tier talent as opposed to the 15 tier. This one is pretty much the same. It actually just allows you to have Agony ramping up to 15 stacks instead of 10. Pretty much most people will take this, but it actually does compete with two other talents, which are a big deal right now. So Death's Embrace was moved from the 100 tier over into the 30 tier. And basically, Death's Embrace is the same. It allows you to have that execute damage, and it also factors in Shadow Bolt. So it's not just your dots; it is also Shadow Bolt, which is a really big deal. And then you have Absolute Corruption, which is on the same tier. And the thing about this is that like Death's Embrace and Absolute Corruption was taken so often in AoE fights as an Affliction Warlock. So to see these on the same tier, it's like you have to choose between an execute. You can choose between having your permanent corruption damage that deals a little bit more damage as well, or you can have Writhe and Agony, which is probably going to be the best single target choice in my opinion, just because of how good it is. But it is possible that maybe Death's Embrace will be better for single target damage. I don't really know yet. That's not really up for me to tell. That's something for time to tell as people get into the alpha or get into the beta or get into the actual game and test this out, right? But it's nice to see all these damage talents on the proper tier, and I feel like these compete pretty well against each other. This talent tier hasn't changed really at all, except for Dark Pact. Dark Pact, how it works now is it actually sacrifices your health instead of your pet's health, and gives you a large shield in return. So it's a little bit more of an ability that makes sense compared to last expansion, whereas if you use Dark Pact, it would sacrifice your pet's health, and then it would give you a shield, but your pet would never really be in trouble, so it's just like you gain a shield. And it's a little bit different now, and probably overall it's a nerf, but these two are pretty much the same, and there's nothing to really talk about here. We have Phantom Singularity and we have Soul Harvest and Sow the Seeds on the same tier. Really nothing's changed here except for one specific thing that I think is really important, is that Sow the Seeds now only spreads your Seed of Corruption to one additional enemy instead of two. This is a really big deal because I feel like the Affliction Warlock has lost a lot of AoE capabilities and is really focusing on single target damage right now. And I'll talk about that later, but it is really important. Like you guys have to note that it only spreads to one additional enemy. So you only have 2 Seeds of Corruption flying out when you cast the ability with this talent as opposed to 3, which is a really big deal, especially for Mythic Plus players. We have Dark Fury, which is a brand new talent, and how this works now is it just gives you a lower cooldown in Shadow Fury, nothing really interesting there. Mortal Coil and Demonic Circle are the exact same. So in the 90 tier, this tier isn't completely finished, but you have Nightfall back available to you. This was a talent in previous expansions, and how it works is your corruption damage gives you a chance for your Shadow Bolt to be instant and deal 25% extra damage. This synergizes really well with Shadow Embrace. So basically, you can put up your dots on a target, and then you could be casting Shadow Bolts, or you could be casting your UAs, and then you could get your Shadow Bolts to basically be instant, which will make this rotation with a Shadow Embrace be a little bit more efficient, because remember, you only have a 10-second debuff window with Shadow Embrace, so it's possible for it to fall off if you're not paying attention, if you're not being careful with your DPS rotation, and Nightfall will basically make that more efficient. I don't know what this second talent is going to be. Currently, it's a duplicate of Nightfall. This will obviously be replaced. It is only the alpha. It's not fully complete. And then we have Grimoire of Sacrifice, pretty much the exact same. It gives you the command demon ability and also deals an extra amount of shadow damage every now and then. You no longer have Grimoire of Supremacy. In fact, you don't even have, to my knowledge, you don't even have Summon Doomguard anymore. And you definitely don't have Summon Infernal. That's a Destruction Warlock offensive cooldown now. So you don't even have those available to you anymore. Last but not least, on the 100 tier, we have Siphon Life, we have Soul Conduit, but we have a new talent, which is Creeping Death. Your Agony will deal their full damage 15% faster. I don't know why it says Corruption and Unstable Affliction, because Unstable Affliction and Corruption don't ramp up in damage over time. So maybe that's just a tooltip error, or maybe there's something that I'm missing, but Agony overall will deal damage 15% faster. This is to mimic the Helmet legendary for Affliction Warlocks and Legion, and basically makes that effect into the actual kit, which will allow you to have, just damage ramping up faster. But since it competes with Siphon Life, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know, these are just based on the numbers, and I don't know which one's going to be better, but it is important to know that that is now a talent, and it is also a little bit stronger than it was. It's 15% instead of the 10% you got from the legendary. And then Soul Conduit's still in the game, and Siphon Life is still in the game. There's really nothing that has changed there. And this is overall my spec for single target damage on the alpha, to my knowledge of what I think is best. And I think that this is really cool because getting into my overall philosophy of the class, I think that this class is really shaped up in a way that makes it more complex. I don't think that this class is super, super difficult to pick up, but a lot of the top raiders in the world who competed and would always switch from mage to warlock, or even Mythic Plus players in the world, a lot of players would pick up warlock, and then they would say that warlock was a better version of mage, and that they could do so much AoE damage, they could do so much single target damage. It just really didn't make any sense for people to play classes other than the warlock, especially because warlock had such a simplified DPS rotation. Since they didn't have a whole lot of buttons to press, it's nice to see warlock get a little bit more complexity added in, get a little bit more diversity in their talents, with stuff like Deathbolt, or whether they want to play with Haunt or not. I think having Haunt in the DPS rotation is a really cool thing. And then you also, in addition to that, you have 4 dots you have to manage, you have Haunt you have to manage, and that's pretty much the extent of it, right? But it does add a little bit more to it, and that was a huge complaint for a lot of players that played Affliction Warlock last expansion. Coming from even Warlords of Draenor or Mist of Pandaria, going into Legion, it was just a very simple version. I do want to note, guys, that Affliction Warlock has changed in a way that I think their single target damage has been improved and their DPS rotation has been improved, but you guys lost a lot of AoE damage. It's really, really important to note that, because in Mythic Plus, Affliction Warlocks were known as one of the best Mythic Plus classes, and now they're in a position where they don't have Soul Flame for their artifact. I have not seen that at all in the alpha. And your Sow the Seeds talent, as I was talking about earlier, only jumps to 1 additional target as opposed to 2. So for you guys to lose so much AoE damage, it really makes me wonder if you guys are not even going to be taken for Mythic Plus AoE damage anymore, and that role will fall on another class. I see the meta changing in a way where you guys lose a lot of that Mythic Plus capabilities, because you just don't have enough AoE damage to keep up with a lot of the other AoE design classes. Marksman Hunter, for example, is mostly entirely AoE. So I think that the overall role for Affliction Warlock is changing in a way that really does focus more on single target damage, but does have AoE capabilities. It's still there. You can still multi-dot, you can still use Seed of Corruption, you can still do AoE damage, and you do have that nice Shadow Fury utility, so it's still possible for you to get through stuff. But I definitely see an overall nerf to the Affliction Warlock AoE damage. But regardless, guys, that is pretty much it for my explanation. I'm going to show some leveling footage so you guys can just see how the DPS rotation works as an Affliction Warlock, and I will talk to you guys again at the end of the video.
It's too far away.
Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. I'm actually giving away an Xbox One X from GameStop this video. All you have to do is leave a like on this video, comment down below, hit subscribe on my YouTube channel, turn those notifications on, and then click the link down in the description so that you can continue finishing your giveaway entries. This giveaway goes until March 5th, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.